The stars of the Valoran Empire burned dim that night. The once great fleets that had stretched across half the galaxy were broken and silent. Ships drifted among debris fields, their engines cold, their banners torn. The long war against the Dominion had finally ended, but victory had cost everything. From the darkness of space came a single golden cruiser. Its hull was scratched, its shields barely alive. Inside the command chamber stood Princess Arelyn Valora, heir to the throne and commander of the 8th War Fleet. Her silver armor bore the marks of battle, and her crown, though still bright, seemed heavy upon her brow. The war had lasted 10 long years. She had led her people from one end of the galaxy to the other. Many of her soldiers were gone, lost in battles where even hope had seemed impossible. The Dominion had sent endless legions of machines, cold and mindless, to erase all organic life. But they had been stopped barely by blood, fire, and sacrifice. As her ship approached the capital world Valora Prime, Arelyn looked out the main viewport. The blue oceans of her home shimmered beneath golden sunlight. It was beautiful, but she felt no joy. Her heart was empty. "Your Highness," said her loyal aide, Commander Varen, a tall Valoran soldier with gray eyes, "the palace awaits you. The people are ready to welcome their victorious princess." Arelyn did not answer at first. She simply watched the planet below, her hand resting on the glass. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Victory, Varen? Do you see victory here?" "I see graves." Varen lowered his head. He had fought beside her through the bloodiest years of the war. He knew the pain she carried. They landed on the royal platform. Crowds cheered from every direction. Flowers fell from the sky. Music filled the air. The people shouted her name, Arelyn the Brave, Arelyn the Unbroken. But her heart felt far away. She smiled and waved, but behind her calm face, she was haunted by a name she had not spoken aloud for years. Elias Ward, the human captain. She remembered him as clearly as if he stood before her, a Terran officer from the blue planet called Earth, who had once fought beside her at the beginning of the war. He was clever, daring, and always calm under pressure. His human warship, Ironlight, had saved her fleet more than once. He was different from her people, less disciplined, more reckless, but full of courage that inspired everyone around him. When the alliance between the Valoran Empire and the Terran Federation had been strong, Arelyn and Elias had fought side by side, commanding joint fleets against the Dominion. Then came the betrayal. The Galactic Council fractured. The Terrans withdrew to defend their home systems, and communication was lost. She never heard from him again. She had believed him dead. Now standing on her homeworld after years of war, that old pain returned like a wound reopened. Later that night, in her private chamber, Arelyn sat alone beside a large holographic window. Outside, the stars glowed softly, scattered like distant fires across the endless black. She whispered to herself, "Where are you, human? Did you forget your promise?" The promise. It had been made long ago when the war was still young. After one of their hardest battles, Elias had told her, "If the galaxy falls apart, Princess, remember this. Humans don't abandon their friends." Not ever. Those words had kept her going through the darkest nights, but now after everything she wondered if they had been only words. Unable to bear the silence, Arelyn ordered her communications officer to open the long-range channel. "This is Princess Arelyn of Valora," she said firmly. "Transmit my message to the Terran Federation." The officer hesitated. "Your Highness, the Federation has been silent for years. We do not even know if their outer colonies still function." "Send it," she said. Her tone left no room for argument. When the line opened, her voice echoed across the galaxy. "To the Terran Federation and to Captain Elias Ward, if you yet live. I return from the battles that have scarred the stars. The war is won, but my heart is heavy. Have you forsaken me, human?" The message was sent. Then came silence, no reply, no signal. No sound but the quiet hum of her ship's systems. She waited through the night. Every few minutes she asked her officers if any response had arrived. Each time they shook their heads. By dawn, the silence felt colder than the vacuum beyond the stars. The next morning, the Royal Council gathered in the Great Hall. High lords and generals filled the chamber, their golden robes flowing. They bowed to her as she entered. "Your Highness," said Lord Saren, an elder noble, "we rejoice at your safe return. The people need your leadership to rebuild the Empire. The Council must decide how to rule the new peace." Arlen listened but felt detached. They spoke of politics, trade, and new colonies, but her mind wandered elsewhere. When the meeting ended, she turned to Commander Varen. "How many ships remain loyal to me?" "Perhaps 50 warships, Your Highness," he replied. "Enough for defense, not for conquest." She nodded slowly. "Prepare the Radiant Vow. We leave tonight." Varen's eyes widened. "Leave? But the Empire needs you here. Where will you go?" Arlen looked toward the stars outside the Great Hall's window. "To find an answer. I cannot rest while I do not know what became of him." Varen frowned. "You would cross half the galaxy for a human?" "The Alliance is gone, Princess. Their kind turned inward. They care for no one now." Her gaze hardened. "Then let me see it for myself." By evening, rumors spread across the capital. The princess was leaving again. Some called her brave. Others whispered that she had lost her mind. But those who truly knew her understood. Arlen never broke a promise. Before departure, she stood in the docking bay, gazing at her ship. The Radiant Vow gleamed under the floodlights, its golden hull reflecting the stars. It was old, patched together from war damage, but still strong. Varen approached her once more. "Are you certain about this, Princess? You may not return." Arlen smiled faintly. "I have been to the edge of death before, Commander. What I seek is not danger, it is truth." The ship rose from the platform, engines burning blue. As it climbed into orbit, the lights of Valora Prime faded below. Ahead stretched the endless stars. She sat in the captain's chair, eyes fixed on the holographic display. Her heart beat faster as the ship's jump engines charged. In that quiet moment before the stars stretched into lines, she whispered again to herself, "Have you truly forsaken?" The jump engines of the Radiant Vow hummed like a deep heartbeat through the metal halls. Blue light from the hyperspace tunnel reflected off the golden walls of the Valoran cruiser. Princess Arlen stood in silence on the bridge, watching stars flow like rivers of silver around her ship. For the first time in many years, she was without orders, without armies, and without the noise of war. Now there was only her purpose, to find the human who had once stood beside her when the galaxy burned. Her crew worked quietly. Most of them thought their princess was chasing ghosts. Commander Varen, loyal as ever, remained at her side. His uniform was polished, his face calm, but worry filled his eyes. "My princess," he said, "we have crossed 5 sectors already, no sign of Terran signals. The humans may have hidden their worlds completely." Arlen turned toward him. "Then we keep searching." He sighed softly. "You chase a memory, Arlen. Even if he lived, so much time has passed. Humans are short-lived creatures. He may be gone." She looked away, her gaze distant. "He once said humans do not abandon their friends. Until I see his grave, I will believe his words." They first traveled to the Itheron belt, where old Alliance outposts once stood. But when they arrived, only ruins remained, broken satellites drifting among asteroids. The Terran flag, faded and torn, floated in the void. Arlen stared at it through the viewport. "They fought hard here," she whispered. "Yes," said Varen, "and died alone." She ordered her crew to recover the flag. When the soldiers brought it aboard, she held the cloth gently in her hands. "Humans leave marks wherever they go," she said. "Even when they vanish, their courage stays behind." The next stop was the Renov system, once a hub for trade between humans and Valorans. Now it was silent. The space stations were empty, their lights cold. Arlen walked through one of them herself. Dust floated in the air. Her footsteps echoed through deserted halls where merchants had once laughed and children had once played. On a wall, she saw something strange, a human child's drawing. It showed 2 figures, one human and one Valoran, standing under a star with the words, "Friends forever." Her eyes softened. She touched the picture carefully. "Even their children believed in hope," she said. Back aboard her ship, Arlen studied every report from the old Alliance archives. Hours passed, then days. She slept little, driven by the memory of Captain Elias Ward, his steady voice, his calm strength, his eyes that never lost focus even when everything seemed lost. Finally, one night, her ship's sensor officer called out, "Princess, we have detected a faint human transmission. It's weak and old, but it's coming from the Maelstrom Expanse." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew the Maelstrom Expanse, a deadly region of collapsing stars, plasma storms, and wrecked fleets. No one entered it and survived. Is the signal clear? She asked. Barely, Your Highness, the officer replied. It repeats every few hours. The code matches ancient Terran military encryption. Farron stepped forward quickly. Princess, that region is death. No ship can survive there. The storms will tear us apart. Erlen looked at the glowing star map on the table. The signal blinked faintly, like a heartbeat calling from the void. I am not afraid of storms, she said quietly. Plot a course. Farron hesitated. Erlen, Commander, she said, her tone gentle but firm. I led this fleet through the worst war in galactic history. I faced machines that consumed stars. If he is truly there, I will not turn away now. He bowed his head. As you command. As the radiant vow approached the maelstrom expanse, the space around them began to twist. Giant lightning storms flashed between drifting debris. Shattered ship remains floated like silent ghosts. The sensors screamed with false readings. Shields at full power, Erlen ordered. Keep the ship steady. The view outside looked like chaos itself. Rivers of plasma, torn planets, and gravitational waves that bent light. Yet through the storm, the faint human signal pulsed again and again. They followed it deeper into the expanse. Hours turned into days. The ship's system strained under the pressure. Every crew member worked tirelessly, sweat on their faces, fear in their eyes. But Erlen stood firm at the front of the bridge, eyes locked on the signal. Finally, the officer shouted, We've reached the source, Your Highness. It's a station. Small old. Terran design. The image appeared on the screen. A dark metallic base hidden behind a broken asteroid. It was surrounded by wreckage. Human ships long destroyed. Life signs? Erlen asked. One, replied the officer. Faint but alive. The crew gasped. Farron turned to her. Impossible. After so many years? Erlen's heart pounded. Prepare a landing team. They descended in a shuttle through the storm. Plasma lightning flashed around them, shaking the craft violently. The pilot struggled to hold course, but Erlen's calm voice guided them. Steady, trust the path. We are almost there. When they landed on the station surface, everything was dark and silent. Dust floated through broken halls. The air smelled of old metal and burned circuits. Their lights cut through the darkness as they moved deeper inside. Symbols of the Terran Federation still decorated the walls, faded but proud. Finally, they reached the command center. There, sitting beside a dead console, was a man. His armor was cracked, his beard gray, his eyes closed as if he slept. Erlen's breath caught in her throat. Captain, she whispered. She knelt beside him and touched his shoulder gently. His eyes flickered open. For a moment, he looked confused. Then recognition filled his face. Erlen, he said, voice rough and weak. I thought you were gone. Her heart felt both heavy and light at once. And I thought you had forsaken me, human. A faint smile touched his lips. No, princess. I was just waiting for you to find me. Farron and the soldiers stood silently, watching their princess kneel beside the man who had once been her ally. Elias tried to rise, but his body trembled. Erlen helped him sit up, her expression full of quiet strength. You survived here alone all these years? She asked softly. He nodded slowly. The fleet was destroyed. I stayed to send distress signals, hoping someone would hear. I didn't expect it would be you. She looked around the ruined station. The galaxy has changed, Captain. The war is over, but the wounds remain. He gave a tired laugh. Then maybe it's time we start healing it. Together. Erlen smiled for the first time in many years. Then rise, human, you are not forgotten. The stars still need us. They brought him aboard the Radiant Vow. The crew whispered in awe. The human legend who had vanished into storms was alive. As the ship pulled away from the maelstrom, Erlen stood beside Elias at the viewport. The stormlight danced across their faces. He looked out and said quietly, You came all this way? For me? Erlen answered simply, For a promise. Elias nodded. Then we have work to do, Princess. The galaxy still needs its defenders, she smiled softly. Then let's give it hope again. The stars shimmered ahead as their ship set a new course, not for war, but for something greater, the rebuilding of trust between two species that had once stood together against darkness. And though the storms of the maelstrom faded behind them, in Erlen's heart, something bright was rekindled. The corridors of the radiant vow glowed softly as it moved through the calm stars, far from the storms of the maelstrom. The ship carried new life, a human, rescued from the edge of death and time itself. Princess Aerolyn walked slowly through the medical wing. Her footsteps were silent, her long silver cloak brushing against the floor. Inside one of the healing chambers, Captain Elias Ward lay resting on a medical bed. Machines hummed quietly around him. His eyes were closed, his breathing steady but slow. He had survived the impossible. Years trapped alone on a dying station in the most dangerous region of space. His body was scarred, his armor worn, but his spirit had not yet broken. Aerolyn stood beside his bed watching him. She remembered the man he used to be, standing tall in his dark Terran uniform, his voice calm as fleets burned around them. Back then he had been full of life, courage, and stubborn hope. Now he seemed older, quieter, like a flame fighting to stay alive. Varen entered quietly behind her. "He is strong," the commander said. "No Valoran could have lived that long alone. He must have endured much." Aerolyn nodded slowly. "Humans are strange, Varen. They are fragile in body, yet their will is harder than steel." She turned back to Elias and whispered, "Rest, my friend. You are safe now." Hours later, Elias woke. His eyes opened to the bright light of the chamber. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he saw Aerolyn sitting beside him, calm and silent. He gave a faint smile. "You never did leave a man behind, did you?" She smiled back softly. "And you never stopped testing the limits of fate." He tried to sit up, and she helped him carefully. "How long was I out?" he asked. 2 days, she replied. "Your body needed rest. You were half-starved, dehydrated, and wounded. But you will recover." He looked at her with quiet gratitude. "You shouldn't have come for me, Aerolyn. The galaxy has changed. There are things worse than storms out there. I came because you once promised me something," she said firmly. "You said humans do not abandon their friends." Elias looked down, his expression thoughtful. "I remember. And I meant it. I never stopped believing that somewhere you were still fighting." She studied his face, seeing the lines of age and hardship. "What happened to you, Elias? Why did you stay in that place for so long?" He leaned back slowly, his voice low and steady. "After the Alliance broke apart, the Terran fleet scattered. We tried to hold the line, but the Dominion pushed too deep. My ship, the Ironlight, took heavy damage protecting a refugee convoy. We jumped into the maelstrom to hide. But the storm tore us apart. I was the only one who made it to the station. I sent distress calls for years, hoping someone would hear." Aerolyn's eyes softened. "And no one came." He shook his head. "Not until you." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Finally, Aerolyn said, "The war is over now. The Dominion is broken, but the peace feels empty. Our alliance is gone. The galaxy is tired." Elias looked out the viewport beside him. "That's what happens after wars. People forget why they fought. They hide, rebuild, and pretend it's over. But peace doesn't last unless someone protects it." She nodded slowly. "Then perhaps that someone must be us again." Over the next days, Elias recovered quickly. His body was weak, but his mind was sharp. He walked through the halls of the Valoran cruiser, studying its design, its crew, and its new systems. The Valoran soldiers saluted him with respect. Even Varen, who had doubted the humans, began to see the strength in the man they had rescued. One evening, Elias stood on the observation deck with Aerolyn. Outside, a field of stars glittered, bright and calm after years of war. "Your people rebuilt well," he said. "The ship's technology looks more advanced than what I remember." "Yes," she replied. "We learned much from humans. You taught us to think differently, to adapt, to improvise. That spirit saved us," Elias smiled faintly. "And you taught us discipline and patience. We were reckless once. Fighting beside your people made us better." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars drift. Then Aerolyn asked softly, "Do you know what remains of the Terran Federation?" Elias's smile faded. "Not much. After the Dominion War, Earth was hit hard. Many colonies fell silent. We withdrew to our core worlds. Communication with the rest of the galaxy stopped. Then humanity lives still?" He nodded. "Yes, but they're isolated now, defensive. They don't trust the Council or the Empires anymore. Too many betrayals." Aerolyn's eyes darkened with memory. "Yes, the Council turned its back on us too. They signed treaties while we were bleeding. When the machines came, they hid." Elias looked at her with quiet understanding. Then maybe it's time we stop waiting for others to fix the galaxy. Maybe it's time we take the lead again. She turned toward him, intrigued. You mean to rebuild the old alliance? He nodded slowly. Something like that. You and I once led fleets that inspired the stars. If humans and Valorans stood together again, others might follow. Erlen hesitated. Our people are weary. They might not want another war. It wouldn't be war, Elias said. It would be rebuilding hope, showing the galaxy that unity isn't a dream. She looked into his eyes and saw the same fire that had once led armies into impossible victories. For the first time in many years, she felt the spark of purpose return. Days turned into weeks as they planned together. Elias studied maps of old Dominion sectors, pointing out areas where enemy fleets might still hide. Erlen coordinated with her engineers to repair and upgrade the surviving ships of her fleet. Soon, the Radiant Vow was no longer just a ship. It became a symbol. Rumors began to spread across the galaxy. The Princess of Valora has returned from war with a human at her side. The Lost Alliance breathes again. Varen entered the strategy chamber one night holding a data tablet. My princess, he said, reports are coming in. Several colonies near the frontier have been attacked. The Dominion remnants are gathering under a new leader. Elias straightened. Then it begins again. Erlen's voice was calm. We can't allow the Dominion to rise once more. But we cannot face them alone. We need allies. Elias smiled slightly. Then let's find them. I know where to start. He opened an old map showing Terran space. The humans will listen to me, but they'll need proof that the Valorans still stand with them. Together we might convince them to fight again. Not for conquest, but for survival. Erlen studied the map, then met his gaze. Then we stand together once more, human. Elias nodded. Just like old times. Before they left, Erlen stood in her private chamber gazing at the stars. The pain of years seemed to fade a little. She thought of how strange it was. After all the battles, after all the loss, it was a single human's promise that had brought her hope again. When she turned, Elias stood at the doorway. He said quietly, "We're ready. The fleet is fueled and armed. Once we cross the outer systems, there's no turning back." She smiled faintly. Then let's remind the galaxy what courage looks like. As the Radiant Vow rose from the docks, its engines glowed brighter than ever. Dozens of Valoran ships followed, forming a small but determined fleet. Elias stood beside Erlen on the command deck, their eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Destination? The helmsman asked. Elias and Erlen spoke at the same time. Earth. The stars stretched into lines as the fleet jumped into hyperspace. Two old warriors leading a new dawn for a broken galaxy. And in that moment, neither of them felt broken anymore. They were whole again, together. The Radiant Vow and its small fleet of loyal Valoran ships moved steadily through the uncharted sectors, escorted by the few surviving human vessels Elias could gather. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, calm and glittering, yet tension filled the bridge. Every captain, every crew member knew that the Dominion remnant still lurked in the dark, waiting to strike. Princess Erlen stood at the viewport, her silver cloak catching the soft light of distant suns. Her eyes reflected both determination and worry. We cannot fail, she whispered almost to herself. The galaxy cannot be left in their hands again. Elias stood beside her, silent for a moment. Then he said, "You are right. But we are not alone. The crews are loyal. The fleets are strong, and we fight for more than power. We fight for hope." Erlen smiled faintly. Hope, yes. That is something even the Dominion cannot destroy. Their first stop was a hidden Terran colony on the outskirts of the outer systems. It had been abandoned after the Dominion attacks, left to fall into disrepair. Elias guided the fleet into orbit carefully. The colony's orbital defense grid was mostly offline, but old guns still dotted the stations. "Keep the shields up," he instructed. "We don't know who else may be watching." Erlen led a small landing party to inspect the colony. Buildings were ruined, corridors empty, yet traces of life remained. Small gardens overgrown, tools left where people had worked, and faded murals showing humans and Valorans standing together. Erlen paused to touch one of the murals. "They still believed in us," she whispered. "Even when we were gone," Elias nodded. "And we will honor that belief." The two of them moved to the central command building. There, Elias accessed old Terran databases. His fingers danced over the controls, pulling up records of surviving fleets, hidden outposts, and loyal commanders. "We can gather enough forces here," he said. "We only need to reach out carefully. Rumors of our return must be strong enough to inspire, not frighten." Erlen's lips pressed together. "We cannot fail. Too much depends on this." As days passed, the fleet began to grow. Small human ships hidden in asteroid fields joined their cause. Valoran vessels, repaired and upgraded under Erlen's direction, flew side by side with humans once more. It was a sight few had ever believed possible. Two races, once separated by war and distance, united under one banner. Yet not all welcomed them. Some colonies, wary from years of isolation, refused to respond to their messages. Others doubted Erlen herself, the dead princess who had survived impossible battles. Elias reminded her constantly that trust must be earned, not demanded. "It will take time," he said one evening as they plotted their next move. "Even loyalty is fragile. But fear and hope can coexist if you lead with courage." Erlen nodded. "Then we lead with courage." Meanwhile, Dominion remnants were not idle. Reports reached Erlen's fleet of strange ships appearing near resource worlds, attacking without warning. It became clear that a new leader had risen among the Dominion. Unlike the previous commanders, this one was cunning, striking from the shadows and avoiding direct confrontation. Varen, standing beside Erlen on the bridge, frowned. "They are testing us," he said, waiting for a mistake. Erlen's eyes narrowed. "Then we show them there is no mistake too large for us to face." Elias added, "We are not just defending ourselves. We are reminding the galaxy that courage is not lost, even after years of despair." The fleet moved quickly to intercept Dominion raiders near a mining planet. The battle was chaotic. Plasma bolts tore through space, engines screamed, and alarms blared. Yet Valorans and humans fought side by side with flawless coordination. Erlen led the front line personally, maneuvering her flagship with precision. "Focus on the lead ships," she ordered. "Cut off their escape routes." Elias coordinated the human squadrons, guiding fighters through the chaos. "Keep together. Protect the cargo ships. No one gets left behind." For hours the battle raged. Ships were damaged, but none fell to panic. The Dominion, expecting disorganized targets, was caught off guard. By the time the smoke cleared, several Dominion vessels had been destroyed and the rest retreated into the darkness. The fleet cheered. Though exhausted, Erlen smiled. "Victory today, but we must remain vigilant. The real threat is still out there." Elias approached her, his uniform singed from the battle. "You lead well, Princess. Your people follow not because they must, but because they believe in you." Erlen looked at him, her gaze steady. "And you, human. You remind me why courage matters. Together we make them stronger." After the battle, the fleet settled into a hidden sector to repair and regroup. Here Erlen and Elias worked tirelessly, visiting each ship, speaking to crews, and ensuring morale stayed high. The humans admired her bravery, and the Valorans respected her wisdom. Together they were more than a fleet, they were a symbol. One night, in the quiet of the command deck, Erlen asked Elias, "Do you ever regret staying behind? Being alone in that storm for all those years?" Elias looked at her, his eyes reflecting the distant stars. "No, I never stopped believing. That is what kept me alive. If I had given up, we would never have returned to this moment." She nodded slowly. "I see now. Courage is not just about battle. It is about hope. Believing in what seems impossible." "Yes," he said, "and it is stronger when shared." News of their fleet's return began to spread. Traders, scouts, and distant colonies whispered tales of the dead princess and the lost human captain, who had returned from the stars with a new alliance. The stories grew with each retelling, inspiring isolated settlements to send supplies and reinforcements. Erlen and Elias knew, however, that inspiration alone was not enough. Dominion forces still lurked, gathering strength, and a final strike would be needed to secure the galaxy. They gathered the commanders together in the strategy room. A large holographic map of Dominion territory hovered above the table. "We cannot wait," Erlen said. "If we act now, we can strike at their core before they rebuild. Delay and the opportunity is lost." Elias pointed to the Dominion stronghold, their control world. "If we disable it, their fleet loses coordination. It's heavily defended, but we can do it. If we use stealth and coordination." Varen leaned forward. "It is dangerous. Many lives will be at risk." Erlen's voice was calm, resolute. "The galaxy has waited too long. We cannot allow fear to rule our actions. Every life we save now, every settlement we protect, will matter for generations. This is our chance to secure the future." The room fell silent. Then one by one, commanders nodded. They understood that the princess and the human were not asking for blind loyalty. They were offering purpose. As the fleet prepared for Operation Dawnforge, the strike at the Dominion's control world, Erlen and Elias walked together on the deck. The stars stretched endlessly and the hum of the engines was steady. "You were right," Erlen said quietly. "The galaxy needs defenders. Not just warriors, but leaders who inspire hope." Elias smiled faintly. "And you, Princess, are one of the best I've ever known. Humanity learned much from your people, and now your people can learn from ours. Together we make them stronger than any machine army." She looked out at the stars, a fierce determination in her eyes. "Then we fight, not for glory, not for power, but for hope. For every life that still deserves a future." Elias nodded. "Then let them come. We will show the galaxy that courage never dies, and that promises once made are never forgotten." The fleet moved forward, ready for the battles to come. Ships gleamed under distant suns, human and Valoran flags flying side by side. The shadows of the Dominion stretched ahead, but for the first time in years, the galaxy had a reason to hope. Princess Erlen and Captain Elias Ward stood together, eyes on the horizon, knowing that the rise of the Forgotten Alliance was only the beginning. The stars seemed to shine brighter that day, as if they themselves were aware of the battle about to come. Princess Erlen stood on the bridge of the Radiant Vow, her silver armor glinting under the soft glow of the control panels. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic map of the Dominion control world, a massive fortress surrounded by fleets that had survived the previous war. Beside her, Captain Elias Ward studied the same display. His hand rested lightly on the console, but his mind was alert. He had faced impossible odds before, and he knew this battle would demand everything from him: his crew, his ships, and his courage. "Are we ready?" Erlen asked, her voice calm but full of authority. Elias nodded. "We are. The fleet is in position. Valoran and Terran squadrons are synchronized. Everyone is ready to strike when we give the order." Varen, standing behind them, added, "This is more than a battle. This is the moment that will decide the galaxy's future. We cannot falter." Erlen's eyes hardened. "Then we do not falter. Not today, not ever. For every life the Dominion has destroyed, we will fight tenfold in return." The fleet moved in silence through the outer systems, shields at full power, engines humming like a heartbeat. Smaller vessels darted ahead, scanning for traps, while the larger ships followed in formation. The Dominion's fleet, massive and cold, waited near the control world. The first shots were fired when a scouting Terran ship detected enemy fighters trying to flank their left side. Plasma bolts tore through space, exploding against shields. Erlen gripped the railing of the command deck. "Engage the enemy," she ordered. "Focus on the flanks. Protect the main fleet." Elias's voice carried over the communication channel. "Terran fighters intercept. Valoran ships cover the cargo vessels. Do not let a single enemy slip through." The battle erupted into chaos. Stars seemed to blur as fleets collided, weapons fired, and alarms blared. The Dominion's metallic ships moved with mechanical precision, but the humans and Valorans fought with a will that could not be predicted. Erlen piloted her flagship into the heart of the conflict. She dodged plasma fire, returned shots, and coordinated the fleet with a calm intensity that inspired everyone aboard. Elias guided his Terran squadrons through the chaos, weaving between enemy fire. "Keep formation. Watch each other's backs.
No one gets left behind."
For hours the battle raged. Ships were damaged, shields overloaded, and explosions lit up the darkness of space. Yet the Dominion was unprepared for the unity of the human Valoran alliance. Each strike, each maneuver was precise, coordinated, and relentless. Then the Dominion unleashed a weapon unlike anything seen before. A massive energy beam that tore through space, capable of destroying entire ships in a single strike. Alarms screamed across the fleet. Farron shouted, "Evasive maneuvers! All ships, move now!" Erlen's eyes scanned the display. She realized that the only way to save the fleet was to intercept the weapon directly. Her heart pounded, but her resolve did not waver. "Elias," she said, turning to him, "we have to act now. We must stop that weapon before it destroys everything." Elias looked at her, understanding immediately. "Then we do it together," he said. The two of them piloted their ships toward the weapon. The Radiant Vow and the remaining Terran vessels flew side by side, weaving through fire and energy streams. Erlen's skill was unmatched. Elias's courage was unshakable. As they approached the Dominion weapon, it began to charge again. The energy beam pulsed, shaking the very space around it. Erlen fired coordinated volleys, while Elias's fighters targeted the weapon's control nodes. "Almost there," Erlen shouted. "Hold your positions! Focus fire on the core!" The weapon exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The force sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Ships rocked, alarms blared, and debris floated like stars in the void. Elias's ship took the brunt of the blast. Communications went silent. Erlen's heart leapt into her throat. "Elias, respond!" she cried. A faint signal flickered back. "Go, finish the fight." "Princess," his voice was weak but steady, her eyes filled with determination, "I will not let your sacrifice be in vain." With renewed resolve, Erlen rallied the fleet. The Dominion forces were momentarily stunned. She led the attack with precision, coordinating every ship to strike at the enemy core simultaneously. The Dominion's central command world began to fall apart. Its shields collapsed, its fleet scattered, and its communications were destroyed. Explosions lit the skies of the fortress as the remaining enemy ships fled in disarray. The battle was won. The Dominion's remnants were scattered, their power broken for good. Erlen's crew cheered. Valorans and humans alike celebrated, but she did not smile. Her heart ached for the human who had given everything to protect her and the fleet. Days later, Erlen oversaw the aftermath. Planets and colonies were being rebuilt. Refugees returned to their homes. Trade routes reopened. The galaxy breathed again, freed from the shadow of the Dominion. Yet one thing still weighed on her mind. Elias. She had not heard from him since the final attack. Then a message arrived, encrypted in old Terran codes. It was a faint signal, coming from a remote system near the edge of explored space. Erlen's hands trembled as she activated the message. The transmission showed a single phrase in Elias's familiar handwriting. "Still here, Princess. Took more than a storm to finish me." Coordinates attached, her heart raced. Without hesitation, she ordered the fleet to jump to the coordinates. They arrived at a small hidden moon. The surface was rocky, barren, but alive with a quiet presence. There, standing among the rocks, was Captain Elias Ward, alive, injured but smiling. Erlen stepped down from the shuttle, her cloak fluttering in the wind. She ran toward him. "Elias!" she cried. He turned and opened his arms. "Erlen!" "You came," he said, voice full of warmth. She threw herself into his embrace. Tears ran down her cheeks. "I thought I had lost you," she whispered. "You never lost me," he said softly. "Humans keep their promises, Princess. I promised you before, and I never forgot." They stood together, looking out at the stars above the barren moon. The galaxy had changed, but some things remained the same. Courage, loyalty, and the bond between two warriors who had once fought side by side. Erlen took a deep breath. The galaxy is free now, but the future must be built with trust and hope, not just weapons. Elias nodded. "Then let's build it together." In the weeks that followed, Erlen and Elias led the effort to rebuild the alliance between humans and Valorans. They traveled to distant colonies, visited recovering planets, and inspired people with their courage and unity. The story of the dead princess and the lost human captain spread across the stars. They became legends not because of war alone, but because they reminded everyone that hope, courage, and loyalty could survive even the darkest times. One evening, as Erlen and Elias stood on the deck of the Radiant Vow, watching the sun rise over a distant planet, she whispered, "I thought you had forsaken me." Elias smiled, taking her hand. Never, Princess. Humanity does not abandon its friends. Not ever. The stars shimmered above them, brighter than ever. Ships of the newly rebuilt fleet glided across space, humans and Valorans side by side. A new era was beginning, one of peace, trust, and unity. Princess Erilyn looked at Elias and smiled. Then let us make sure the galaxy remembers this lesson. Elias nodded, his eyes steady. Together, we will.